All right, class, we have finished section 1 of chapter 7. Now we're on to section 2, which is the effects of deviance on society. As we're going to see, we have some positive effects and some negative effects. Don't confuse this with positive and negative deviance. They're two totally different things. All right, the costs and benefits here. So functionalism, as if you remember, is one of the 3 theoretical perspectives of sociology. That's kind of what we're delving into here. Emphasizes social stability, so how stable a society can be. And from this perspective, some deviance is good to make sure society runs smoothly. And that's going to be a positive effect of deviance. Think of it like this: if everyone conforms 100%, you're kind of like, I don't know, in the Soviet Stalin communism, where no one has any freedom or ability to be themselves. So yeah, some deviance contributes to smooth operation, and that's positive, but let me refrain. So that's a positive effect. There's also negative effects that happen on society too. We'll get into there too. And remember, don't confuse this with the idea of positive deviance and negative deviance, like we talked about in the first video. Okay, so let's start with the negatives. Number 1, it erodes trust in society. So if everyone's being deviant, especially the people in charge, then why should you follow the rules, right? Especially if there's no sanctions, if there's no penalties for the people who are breaking them. We see this kind of behavior happen when there's riots, when there are lootings, when there's sometimes during, for instance, in the 1970s in New York City, there was a blackout that lasted, I think, for like 2 days. People were rioting and just looting and stealing stuff. Everything broke down because no one was getting punished because all law and order was just gone. So that's not a good thing. Let's go back to history. Okay, everyone watching this has studied this in my U.S. history class. So one period in time in American history where a lot of government leaders were not following the rules. And this could be from senators or, the mayor to the police. They were being bribed, a lot of them, to look the other way, not follow the law. And this lasted for a period of about 10 to 13 years. Eventually it was changed because this thing was a disaster, but what am I talking about? What is this thing that happened in U.S. history where, trust was eroded in society because there were there were some sanctions, but a lot of people were breaking the law, including the people that were supposed to be enforcing it. Okay, if you answered prohibition, you answered correctly. If you answered something else, maybe also correct, but something I just didn't think about. But prohibition is what I was specifically referring to. In that case, when people saw the cops being bribed by the mafia, it's like, well, what's the point? Why should I follow the rules? So that's a negative effect of deviance. Excuse me. I'm making these videos, my voice is going. How am I going to do that? Okay. So yeah, it can stimulate more deviance in others, and it's also expensive. So the more deviance there is, again, this really goes to like breaking laws and stuff. You have to have more people to deal with it, and it costs more money to deal with. So for example, okay, can't use prohibition, but what if no one followed rules in driving? Stoplight, optional. Parking, wherever. Imagine how much of a disaster that would be if everyone just kind of broke the rules and became deviant drivers. There's a train in the background. I hope that didn't interrupt things. But yeah, you'd have traffic jams, you'd have accidents, people would be delayed going places, you might have injuries and deaths. It would cost a lot of money to fix everything, so that would be bad. So negative effect of deviance. How does it benefit society? Okay, when some, and again, back to celebrities, when the celebrity like violates, becomes a deviant. And then they get, they're all over the newspapers here. Here's Lindsay Lohan from a couple years ago. So people were like, oh, look at that. Don't be like Lindsay. Lights out for Lohan at 48 hours after DUI bust. So, yeah, she didn't have a good 2 days there. So this kind of, for the rest of us, normal people, this is like, okay, I'm doing a good job because that's not me in that picture. So that sort of reaffirms our commitment to follow the rules of society. Yes, hoarders, great example. Every time I watch this, I'm like, oh, I'm so organized. But if you see my desk, I'm not. But again, this kind of, when you get to the extremes here, you see the extremes of deviance. It can make people, be more committed even to, oh, I'm gonna clean up my apartment. And in fact, I have cleaned up after watching Hoarders on more than one occasion. Another example might be if you watch that show, like My 600-Pound Life, and then afterwards you go to the gym or you go out for a run. That's a benefit of deviance. Another one could be what's called minor deviance here, and this is so a temporary safety valve. Basically, it's kind of just a way to let off steam. If it's like, you better go to bed at 10 o'clock, don't you dare watch YouTube. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to watch a 5-minute video. That'll show them. That's deviant behavior, technically. You're not doing what you're supposed to be. Or let's say you wear some shirt with something crazy on it, and again, it's minor deviance. You're kind of like rebelling, and it's kind of like, I'm not going to tell you to rebel, but well, minor deviance may relieve some pressure teens feel from the authority figures in their lives. In other words, a lot of pent-up anger, or frustration or whatever, people, if they keep it all in, they tend to explode. But again, a temporary safety valve where some of this minor deviance kind of, just listen to your parents, kids. Okay. The other thing about deviance is that it can increase unity in a society or a group. So it strengthens people to their values. Okay, in this picture here, let's see, I want to formulate a question. Okay, here's a question. What year did this take place in? Or what decade? Next question. A spy, what does the A maybe stand for? Okay. A spy, a couple doomed to die. This is Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and they were caught in the 1950s as being spies who smuggled the secrets of the atomic bomb over to the Soviet Union. So, the United States used the atomic bomb and, figured it was going to take the Soviets a while to develop it. Instead, the Soviets had spies, and they basically stole the information and developed their atomic bomb really quickly. This is Cold War kind of stuff. So when stuff like this happens, people get like super patriotic, want to protect the country. The Soviets have an atomic bomb too. Let's unify. People can go overboard, like with the McCarthy hearings and stuff, and the Second Red Scare. But yes, it was confirmed in the 90s that Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were indeed Soviet spies. At the time, a lot of people didn't believe it, but anyway, kind of going off on a tangent, you see something bad happen, you kind of want to unify as a group. So deviance can help a society, strengthen your commitment to your values. Another thing, and this is usually not seen until later, but it promotes social change. So we have the women's suffrage movement. They were deviants at the time. The results, women can vote. That's a great thing. But at the time, a lot of people looked down on them and beat them and put them in jail. Same thing with the civil rights protests in the 50s and 60s. People were assassinated, people were beaten and jailed. It was considered deviant at the time to protest against, the current system. But the way we look back at it now, Martin Luther King, he has his own holiday he's celebrated so much. So that's how norms can really shift. So sometimes this deviance, it needs to happen. Okay, question here. What group is this? And who was its leader? Or what were these ladies called? Or what war did it take place during? So hopefully we all know that, because she is a New Jersey hero in addition to being an American hero. And then I have this, I show this in my history classes, where, again, this is from back in the time. It was an anti-women's suffrage poster. What's the point? Well, on the left, that woman is conforming. On the right, she's a deviant. So this is the perspective from, let's say, this was probably from like 1910 or something like that, where we clearly see that the deviant person from this perspective is this crazy woman screaming out on the streets about how she should vote, and she's not doing the right thing, which is being home with her child. But let me go back. Here, these women are celebrated today. They were deviants at the time, but that's how, another example again of how a positive effect of deviance, it can bring about much needed change. Okay, that's it for this video.